What is up, fellas? We are back for another UFC predictions video, this time for UFC 303. Pereira versus Prochazka 2 on International Fight Week. Let's jump right in. Kicking us off at bantamweight, Ricky Simone versus Vinicius Oliveira. Also, I forgot to mention, all my picks and stuff are on the board, guys. I'm pretty bold on this card. I got a lot of underdogs here. So if you just want to pop in, see what I picked, and pop out, there you go. Um, But yeah, kicking us off at bantamweight, Ricky Simone versus Vinicius Oliveira. Um, this is a pretty tricky fight for Ricky Simone, but I do think he can win. Oliveira is a really dangerous finisher. I think he has 14 or 15 knockouts out of his 20 wins. 16. Holy shit. And he's got 2 subs. This guy is a prolific finisher. And Ricky Simone is a bit chinny. I wrote that on the board, but I do think that Ricky Simone can win this fight simply because he's an absolute dog. He doesn't really get tired at all. His pace is super high. Even in his main event fight against Song Yadong that went into the 5th round, Ricky Simone shot a bunch of takedowns, and a lot of them he missed. And I mean, even in the 5th round, he wasn't gassed at all. Like, Ricky Simone has a really deep gas tank. He can go and push a really hard pace. He's very strong. He chain wrestles well. He has decent submissions and pretty good ground and pound as well. And the reason I like him over Oliveira here in this fight, or at least I'm leaning towards him over Oliveira in this fight, is that Oliveira was very easily taken down and controlled by a guy who I think is a lot less of a grappler than Ricky Simone and Sopai. Granted, Oliveira ended up knocking out Sopai with a flying knee in like the last 20 seconds. I'm sure you guys have seen that viral clip. It was an insane fucking knockout. Um, Obviously, Oliveira here is a live underdog. I think he has really dangerous striking. I think a lot more dangerous than Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone's got decent boxing and he's got decent power, but it's nothing compared to what Oliveira is doing to a lot of these guys. So I can see a world where Oliveira pulls out the upset, maybe a flying knee, switch knee on Ricky Simone shooting a shot, or he catches him on the feet as well. It's entirely possible. I think the line is a little bit wide, but I do think Ricky Simone should be able to squeak out a decision here over Vinicius Oliveira here by just applying his wrestling pace. And I think he could probably get a finish on Oliveira too. Um, Whether that be by ground and pound, I think he's strong enough on top to where he can probably force himself into a position and give him like an arm triangle, similar to, I believe, how he beat Jack Shore. I believe he beat Jack Shore with an arm triangle. Doesn't say. I'm pretty sure he did. I don't remember exactly though. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Ricky Simone. I'm gonna be bold. I'm gonna say Ricky Simone gets a submission win via arm triangle over Vinicius Oliveira. Moving up to flyweight, Ray Tasuria versus Carlos Hernandez. Guys, this fight is a little bit tricky to call. I have Tasuria here. Uh, I have this fight kind of as a 50-50 in my head, despite the line being absolutely bonkers insane. Carlos Hernandez is not bad. I don't know why he's lined at plus almost 400. Guys, I always say that these videos aren't betting advice, and I don't like to give betting advice. But, like, I think Carlos Hernandez will cover plus 400. I think he should be like, if he's going to be an underdog, maybe like plus 150 tops. Like, Ray Tasuria is really good. He's got really good grappling, decent ground and pound, nice submissions, a good pace. It seems like he's got pretty good endurance as well to be shooting these takedowns. But man, Carlos Hernandez is a guy who's not a bad grappler himself. He was able to scramble really well against Tetsuro Taira, and I'm not buying into the fact that Tetsuro is a better grappler than Taira or anything like that. So, and on the feet, I feel like Carlos Hernandez is a lot better. Uh, unless Ray Tsuria added some folds into his game, I think on the feet, Carlos Hernandez will be the sharper striker. He was able to strike pretty well against Dennis Bondar, who's a guy I think is really technical despite being 0-3 in the UFC. I think that guy's actually quite good. And he TKO'd him. I know it's not listed as a TKO for Hernandez on his record, but he did TKO Dennis Bondar. I'm leaning right now to Ray Tsuria, but I think this line is fucking insane. Um, I think he can work a grappling pace, and I think he can. I think he's the better grappler overall. But I think there is potential here for Carlos Hernandez as this fight gets kind of into deeper waters, which I think it will. I think this fight will probably go the distance. I think Ray Tasuria will start out pretty hot in like the first two, but then I think he's going to fall off, and I think Carlos Hernandez will come on at that point. Um, I think this fight's going to be a pretty close competitive decision, honestly, is what I'm thinking. But I'm now kind of taking into account if it's a close competitive decision, who are the judges going to give a decision to? Probably the undefeated prospect if it's close. So I'm going to go with Ray Tasuria. I think he's going to squeak out a decision here over Carlos Hernandez. I think this fight's going to be closer, at least a lot closer than this line signifies. However, if Tasuria goes out there and blows up Carlos Hernandez really easily, I'd be very fucking impressed if he does, honestly. Because Carlos Hernandez, who's he lost to? Alan Nascimento and Tatsuro Taira. That's it. Does that make you plus 400 against a guy who's never really fought in the UFC? I don't think so. Moving up to heavyweight, Andrei Arlovsky versus Martin Buday. Guys, I really don't have a good read on this fight. Didn't watch any tape on this fight at all. Because why the fuck would I want to do that? I'm going with Martin Buday though, just because I feel like at this point, Andrei Arlovsky's career, I just I think the prospect, I say the prospect killer, but like the era of him kind of checking these guys, I think is kind of gone. And I think Boudet is, I don't want to say Boudet's good because I don't think he's good, but he's got decent hands. He's got good hand speed. He's a huge fucking guy. He's young. He's got good volume. He's pretty goddamn accurate. I think he'll just be able to beat Andrei Arlovsky over 3 rounds here. Um, it's pretty much as simple as that. I also think Martin Boudet can track Andrei Arlovsky down because Andre now likes to use a lot of movement to get out of the way of the guys he's fighting. He likes to be a little bit quicker, move a little bit more, be a little bit more dynamic. I think Boudet can push him up against the cage and really start to work his style of kind of just like an ugly fucking striking fight up against the cage, up close. I think Boudet can win this fight. I think he can win this fight by a decision here. I don't really see him putting out Arlovsky. I think that, who's put out Arlovsky? Dante Almeida is the only guy who's put out Arlovsky. Waldo Cortez Acosta couldn't, um, which is funny. But yeah, I think Boudet here just gets a decision. Much younger, probably a lot more motivated at this point in his career. I think he's got a good style to do it to track Arlovsky's movement down and get him up against the cage and land effective strikes. So I'm going to go with Boudet here by decision. But you never count out the old man. He's fucking 45. Closing out the early prelims at women's strawweight, Michelle Waterson Gomez versus Jillian Robertson. Guys, both women's fights on this card, I feel like are just absolute sketch fests. I don't trust any of these ladies at all. Worth a shit. But I am going with Jillian Robertson, and if you look on the board, I have high variance written there in this fight because this fight I feel like it can go so many different ways. Um, I can see Michelle Waterson Gomez upsetting, but I feel like at this point in Michelle Waterson's career, she is 1-6 in her last 7 fights. I'm pretty sure it's looking like that. Yes, 1-6 in her last 7. I mean, that's fucking abysmal. Jillian Robertson, though, she's kind of hit and miss, but she's beaten some really low level competition, in my opinion, comparing to Michelle Waterson. And she's lost to, I mean, JJ Aldrich, that loss isn't really that good. Tabitha Ritchie's fine. But I just think, I mean, Michelle Waterson, she's going to be the smaller lady in there. She's 38. She's coming off of 4 losses in a row. She's the better striker. I think she's definitely more technical on the feet. Her takedown defense is pretty solid. But if she makes one mistake, I think Robertson subs her. That's kind of my problem. Unless Michelle Waterson fights a perfect fight, defends every single takedown, and doesn't do anything fucking stupid, and it's a women's MMA fight, so the chances of something stupid happening are pretty high. Uh I think Robertson can win this fight. I just think she has the finishing upside here. Um yeah, and she's like I said, bigger, younger. I feel like she's more motivated. She's riding a lot more momentum. Um yeah, basically. I can see either lady winning this, but I'm gonna lean with the person I just feel like whose head is in the game a little bit more. Personally, I don't know that for sure, but moving up to bantamweight, Peyton Talbot versus Yanis Gamori. Guys, let's go with Yanis Gamori. No. Peyton Talbot minus fucking 1600. I'm going with Talbot here. This line is fucking insane though. Like this is an absolutely barbaric line. I don't know who minus 1600 is crazy because Giannis Gamori, like he's not. I mean, he's not fucking John Jones in his prime, but this guy, he's got some fucking skills. You know what I mean? But Peyton Talbot, I mean, he's a really good prospect at this point. I tried to fade him with Simon last time. That shit did not pan out. He looked better than he ever has. This guy's got really good striking, really good chin, really good cardio and endurance, insane volume, and good power too. I mean, you don't really see Cameron Simon get rocked very much, but Talbot was hurting him bad. I just he seems really talented in that bantamweight. 5'10", decent reach. I think he's just gonna tee off on Giannis Gamora here in the later rounds, like 2-3, probably get a TKO win for himself. Um, yeah, gonna go with Peyton Talbot by TKO here in this fight. Moving up to featherweight, Charles Jourdain versus Gene Silva. Now this fight is lined very close. And I think it's due to a bit of recency bias because I'm going with Charles Jourdain here. I feel like he is just outright better than Gene Silva pretty much everywhere, especially like Charles Jourdain a lot of the time is not the bigger guy with like more or the same reach in his fights is what you'll notice. Not that often. So I feel like that's going to benefit him a lot. And like his fight against Woodson, he's fighting like an absolute freak with like I forget what Woodson's reach is, but it's something insane for featherweight. Um, I think Gene Silva is the guy who's going to give Charles Jourdain the perfect style matchup to win this fight. Jourdain is a guy in the grappling. He's got a very legit black belt. He's got very nasty subs. He's really good at staying safe as well. Um, on the feet, I feel like Jourdain's a much more technical kickboxer. Gene Silva's dangerous. He's got good power. He swings hard. He comes to fight. He's like a pit bull in there. But I think that's kind of the style for Jourdain to just kind of fucking style on him a little bit. I feel like, especially like because he's not fighting a guy like Woodson who's going to be out of range and just poking that jab, and Jourdain's going to have to work his way in on Woodson to land his shots. He's going to have a guy who's going to be right in front of him so he can land his shots that way, and I think that helps him out a lot. And I think I just don't think outside of Gene Silva catching him with a shot and KOing him, I don't really see him winning this fight. I don't see him taking down and subbing Charles Jourdain or anything like that. If anything, I feel like if Gene Silva gets a takedown, I feel like he might be in more danger because Jourdain's nasty off of his back as well. I feel like Jourdain's gonna win this fight here. I think he's gonna probably win a decision here over Gene Silva. Is kind of what I'm feeling. Um, yeah, I just think Charles Jourdain is just technically a little bit better. And I think he can win this fight because this is, I think, a more favorable matchup size wise and skill wise for him here. I think he can really show out his skill set here in this fight. But we'll see though. Gene Silva is a dangerous fella. Keeping it at featherweight, Cub Swanson versus Andre Fili. Um, guys, I'm going with Andre Fili here, despite him getting chinned into oblivion by Dan Ige. I just think at this point, in their respective careers, even though Fili's been fighting in the UFC for a billion years, I feel like Cub Swanson, I don't know if I can generally trust him anymore. He has that win over Hakeem Dawodu in his last fight, which he shouldn't have gotten, if I remember correctly. I remember that fight, thinking that fight was a bit of a gifted decision, but he did make that fight relatively close against a guy in Hakeem who I think is pretty good. So he's still got, he's still there. He's not all there, but he's there. Cub Swanson's still a dangerous guy, good striking, good stand up, infinite cardio. Cub Swanson's got a fair shake at winning this fight because Andre Fili, bit chinny, little bit chinny. Um, but man, he's fast, Fili. He hits so hard. And in this fight, man, I just think he's going to be like, he's a lot bigger. He's a lot younger. He's got the reach. I think he's probably got the speed advantage as well. And also that win he got over Lucas Almeida aged pretty well because Lucas Almeida had like a legacy performance against Timothy Kwamba. He had his best performance ever like 2 weeks ago. So that win that Philly got is aging pretty well. I just think Feely as the bigger, younger, stronger, faster guy here. I think he's going to be able to get the better of Cub Swanson in this fight. I think Philly might be a little bit safer in this fight, especially after just getting obliterated by Dan Ige. He might be a little bit more patient in his approach in this fight. I also think if somebody's going to shoot a takedown and get it, it'll probably be Philly. Yeah, I just think Andre Philly here. I think he might win a decision here over Cub Swanson. Could be a late TKO. The Cub's a pretty hard guy to TKO. I think Philly could do it though. He's got good power. But yeah, I think Andre Philly here is going to get the win. But it wouldn't make me upset at all if Cub Swanson gets an upset here. Closing out the prelims at middleweight, Joe Pyfer versus Marc Andre Barriault. Guys, I'm going with Joe Pyfer. Marc Andre Barriault is a guy who I think is okay. Decent striking, really good cardio, puts a good pace on a lot of guys. I think though a guy who's going to be in your face. It's kind of a similar thing to how I was breaking down the Jourdain fight. Joe Pyfer's fighting a guy in his last fight in Hermanson, a guy who's a perennial top 10 contender, and a guy who's a technical striker who doesn't want you to get close to him. That's kind of how he fought Pyfer. He kept Pyfer at a distance, poked, prodded, and moved out of the way of Pyfer's big shots. Marc Andre Barriault isn't going to do that. He's going to be up in your face pretty much the entire time. And I think that benefits Pyfer because I think Pyfer's going to have an easier time finding Barriault. Barriault's a much more hittable guy. Um, and I think if they go power for power, Joe Pyfer's going to have the advantage here. Maybe technique for technique. Barriault's a more technical striker. But I think Pyfer only does need to land one shot. And I also think Pyfer is a very big, strong guy for this division, and he has a nice takedown. I think in a firefight, if Pyfer is like, this guy's kind of putting it on me, I think if anybody's going to shoot a takedown and get it and get a dominant position off of it, I think it's going to be Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer has decent ground and pound. He has a sub as well. I think he is the upside here in this fight. Barriault is a game opponent, but I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer here. I think he's going to get a TKO win here over Marc Andre Barriault in like the first or second round, but we'll see. Opening up the main card at welterweight, fellas, Ian Gary versus Michael Venom Page. Guys, they're giving me Michael Page again as an underdog, and we're taking him again. I'm going with MVP. I just think I think both of these guys are basically counter striking kickboxers. Besides Michael Venom Page, he does have a blitz. He will just blitz in. He'll be on the outside and he'll just blitz in super fast. He did it against Holland basically at will. He was so much faster than Holland. Kevin Holland looked like he was looking at a ghost because how fast MVP was coming in and out. And I feel like Ian Gary is still going to struggle with this. I don't think Ian Gary's leg kicks are really going to be there so much. I don't think I think Ian Gary's going to have to force this fight basically because MVP much more reach. So he's going to be able to when he hits that blitz, he's going to be able to throw that right hand, land on Gary, and Gary's going to have to engage, come into the pocket to land his shots. I think. I think also if Gary is forcing the fight, I think he's worse when he does that. You saw that in the Song Kanan fight. Granted, Ian Gary won, but he forced the fight. He got in too close and he went blow for blow with Song Kanan and he got dropped badly. When he forces the fight and gets up in somebody's face, he does a lot worse. Um, Unless he has them hurt already, you know. I think MVP is going to be able to outpoint Ian Gary here. I think MVP is going to win a decision because I mean I don't see Ian Gary really catching MVP with anything. Like I don't think that head kick's going to be there. I think he's going to have a hard time counterpunching because of how much longer MVP is, and MVP still has very good speed, and I think he's more accurate. I think MVP could probably defend a takedown from Ian Gary. I think Ian Gary would be smart to shoot a takedown in this fight. Um, but I can't say that he will shoot a takedown in this fight. So I just don't feel super confident in picking him here. I'm gonna go with MVP again as the underdog. Uh, he won as the underdog last time. Let's see if he can do it again. We'll see. This is a close fight. I'm excited. I'm actually excited to see this fight. Moving up to women's bantamweight, Mara Bueno Silva versus Macy Chasson. Guys, I'm going Macy Chasson. Earlier on, when this fight was like first announced, Chasson was like a plus 200 and like 15 underdog, and now she has moved up to a straight pick'em with Mara Bueno Silva. The reason I'm picking Chasson here is I just think Bueno Silva is going to struggle to get this fight to the ground, where she does her best work with her submission game. And Chasson on the feet, I think, is a better striker. I think she's got more to similar power as Mara Bueno Silva, but she is so much bigger. 5'11". How many inches reaches that? Almost 6, 5.5. I just think she's going to be able to keep Bueno Silva at range and land her strikes. And even if Bueno Silva gets in, Macy Chasson is really good at pushing people up against the cage. She's got good knees in the clinch, good elbows too. I think she's the better striker. Um, I think Bueno Silva can win this fight. Obviously, if she gets Chasson down, those long limbs do become a bit of a hamperance because Bueno Silva has good arm bars and things like that. Very good submission game. But I'm going to trust in Macy Chasson here to just not get taken down. I think her takedown defense will hold up here, and I think she'll keep this on the feet, keep Silva at range, or if she does get close, tie her up in the clinch and land good shots that way. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Macy Chasson here. I think she's probably gonna win a decision here over Mara Bueno Silva. Moving up to light heavyweights, Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze. Guys, I'm going with another underdog. By the way, I'm going underdog crazy on this card. I'm just letting you know. Going with Anthony Smith here over Roman Dolidze. Guys, why is Roman Dolidze the favorite? Actually, why is he the favorite? What has Roman Dolidze done that makes you think he should be a favorite over Anthony Smith? I know Anthony Smith isn't, a god, but Roman Dolidze's moving up a weight class to light heavyweight. Anthony Smith he was a short notice replacement, but he was getting ready for a fight beforehand. Roman Dolidze, I don't remember if he was. I don't know if he was. But when we look at Anthony Smith's record, I mean, Magomed Ankalaev lost, perennial top 5 guy. Khalil Roundtree, I believe he's top 5 right now. Johnny Walker, that loss is a little bit ugly. It's a little bit ugly. But when we look at his wins, Vitor Petrino sub, Vitor Petrino is better than Roman Dolidze, guys. I mean, give me a fucking break. Ryan Span's a bit of a goofball, but he's a harder opponent, I think, than Roman Dolidze is. And then we look at this prospect killing streak Anthony Smith went on. And when I was looking at this fight, I kind of felt like this fight was going to go similar to the Jimmy Crute fight, because I think Crute is a kind of a similar style to Dolidze in a sense, whereas both of their stand-up is bad. Dolidze's striking is terrible. Jimmy Crute's striking is not good either. But their best path to victory is grappling, in my opinion. But my thing is, Jimmy Crute is a way better grappler than Roman Dolidze is, and he's way bigger than Roman Dolidze. I don't see a way outside of like some insane fluke that Roman Dolidze wins this fight. I think Anthony Smith has a nice jab. He's got a nice 1-2. Roman Dolidze does not. He throws big dumb hooks that don't land on anybody unless you're fucking Phil Hawes. I just don't see it. I don't see him getting a takedown on Smith. And even if he does, Anthony Smith has got pretty good jiu-jitsu. Like, I don't think he's just going to immediately lose if he gets taken down. I think defensively he'll be pretty responsible submission-wise. Um, yeah, I feel like Anthony Smith beats this level of guy. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like he does. Like, I feel like if you're not top 10 guy or like top 7 guy, I don't feel like you beat Anthony Smith. And I don't think Roman Dolidze should be a top 10 guy at middleweight, let alone at light heavyweight. Because I mean, he got ranked in middleweight after like that Jack Hermanson fight where he basically, I don't want to say he fluked to win. It was just that Jack Hermanson made a really stupid decision to engage in the grappling with Roman Dolidze instead of just outstriking him easily like he was doing the entire fight. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Anthony Smith here. I think he's gonna get. I could see him getting a late TKO because Dolidze took an insane amount of damage against Imavov. I'm gonna go with Anthony Smith decision here over Roman Dolidze. I think he's just better. It's his natural weight class, Anthony Smith. I think he's just a better striker, and defensively in the grappling, I think he'll be fine. Moving up to featherweight. Oh God, fellas. Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. Guys, I have been so this is the fight on this card that has torn me up the most. I really don't know about this one. Guys, I really want to pick Brian Ortega. I really do. I know you guys are like, "What? No way. Diego Lopez is the best. He's the greatest fighter of all time." And Diego Lopez is really good. I tried to fade him last time at UFC 300, and he chinned Sadiq Youssef into oblivion. But up until that Sadiq fight, I picked Lopez in almost every fight, besides the Movsar fight, obviously. Um, I just think, like, guys, do you really think Diego Lopez knocks out Brian Ortega in the first round? That's my problem. Like, when you look at Lopez, you look at his record, a lot of finishes, 22 finishes out of 24 wins, and a lot of these finishes are round one. Round one, you just see round one littered everywhere in his record. A couple of threes, a couple of twos. But what you'll notice is a trend when it tends to go the distance, not always so good. He's also been KO'd a couple of times. I feel like this is like Diego Lopez's biggest moment in his career by far. This is the biggest jump up in competition he's ever faced. I feel like the nerves will be there, and Diego Lopez is a guy who dumps the gas tank out pretty quickly. My problem is if he doesn't finish Brian Ortega in like the first round and a half, I think it's problems. Because and I don't think he does finish Brian Ortega in the first round and a half. I've seen Brian Ortega take an inordinate amount of fucking damage to his head. An insane amount of damage to his head. Like he is a difficult guy to finish. I know it says he's 3-2 to the TKO, but one of them was the injury against Rodriguez, and the other was taking like 800 strikes from Max Holloway. He took an absolute licking from Volkanovski. He took a ton of big shots from Rodriguez. I just think this is a hard guy to finish. And if you start to wilt in front of Brian Ortega, he gets like this second wind runner's high. He did it in the Volkanovski fight, if I remember correctly, in the fifth round of that fight. In the fifth round, after taking an insane amount of damage, he started fucking waking up and started landing good shots on Volkanovski. Like he's a guy who is like if you don't get him out of there, he starts to come alive and he starts to put it on you. And I feel like there's going to be momentum shifts in this fight if Lopez doesn't get the finish. Now Lopez is the bigger guy. He's got more reach. He's got, I would say, more power on the feet. I think jiu-jitsu wise, I think these guys are pretty equal. I think in the grappling, I think there's going to be a lot of scrambles if this fight does hit the mat. I think there's going to be a lot of jockeying for submissions. But I also think in this fight, if somebody is obviously if somebody shoots a takedown, it's going to be Ortega, and I think he will get it. But my thing is, I think Ortega, he has good ground and pound. That's my problem. And Diego Lopez is a guy who, once he's on his back, he is more than content with just sitting there and fishing for subs off of his back. I saw it a lot in the Joe Anderson Brito fight on the Contender Series. Um, and Brian Ortega has good enough jiu-jitsu to where I don't think he's going to get caught in anything. Um, it could happen, obviously, but I don't think he will. And I think Brian Ortega is more able to hold Lopez down and land good ground and pound than vice versa. And I think I just oh my god, this fight's so hard for me to call because I can see Diego Lopez catching him early, kind of, but I just don't know if he finishes him. Guys, I'm going with Brian Ortega. I just have this feeling. I just have this feeling that Diego Lopez goes out there early, blows the wad, doesn't get the finish, and then you're left in like the latter half of round 2 and 3 with Brian Ortega with a little bit of a a divot in your gas tank. And I think that's a recipe for you getting your fucking ass beat. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I see this fight as a pick 'em, honestly, but Brian Ortega as an underdog, give me that any day of the week, honestly. And closing out this card with our main event, guys, Alex Pereira versus Yuri Prochazka. Guys, I'm going with Yuri Prochazka as an underdog here against Alex Pereira. Now I know, settle down. I picked Pereira in their first fight, but then I watched their first fight. Yuri Prochazka did really, really good in that first fight for a guy coming off of like a year layoff, a horrific shoulder injury against one of the scariest guys in light heavyweight history. He looked damn good before he got caught. He mixed in a takedown well. He was landing good shots. He was landing better shots than Pereira was, but outside of the calf kick of Pereira, he really couldn't land anything of substance besides the really big knockout shots that he landed, which, I mean, obviously he knocked him out. So why am I like, oh, Pereira didn't do that much, except he fucking knocked him out. I'm not trying to disparage Pereira's performance. I was just really impressed with how Prochazka was getting Pereira up against the cage and kind of making Pereira panic a little bit. Yuri kind of has that effect on people when he gets close to them and they're up against the cage. They kind of like, get the fuck away from me, you lunatic, is kind of the vibe they give off. And he had Pereira just biting on just any movement he was doing. Pereira was just swinging, looking for something. But Prochazka was just doing this weird fucking type shit that he does with his head, just like up against the cage. And he was landing good shots. He had Pereira hurt in that second round. He landed, I think it was a left hand, like a left straight that had kind of had Pereira like, whoa. I feel like this fight specifically is kind of set up. I think it benefits Prochazka for the simple fact, like, Prochazka has been active now. He got that ring rust off of him in the Pereira fight, and he got his confidence back at UFC 300. Pretty quick turnaround, I think. And not super quick, but a quick-ish turnaround against Alexander Rakic. He went through an absolute dogfight war with Rakic, and he knocked him out. He basically just out-toughed him. He said, "Nah, I'd win," and he just knocked out Alexander Rakic, even though he was getting teed off on. So Prochazka's chin's still there, clearly. And now he's got some momentum back. He's got the ring rust gone, and he's staying active. And I feel like, after UFC 300, it kind of has seemed like Pereira's kind of just been going around. I don't want to say he hasn't been training, because he obviously has. But I feel like Prochazka is just kind of like a nose to the grindstone guy. The second he gets out of like the day after a fight, he's back just working. I feel like. So I feel like he's been more ready for a matchup. I also feel like the short notice nature of this fight benefits him in the fact that Yuri Prochazka is a guy. I mean, Yuri Prochazka is like, yeah, I can make 185. I think Yuri Prochazka walks around a lot closer to 205 than Pereira does outside of fight camp. So I think Pereira's going to have a harder weight cut at 36. And I mean, both these guys can win, obviously. But I have the feeling that Yuri Prochazka is going to get this one. I really do. Um, I also think if there's a takedown shot in acquired, it's going to be from Prochazka. Now, Pereira does have a decent guillotine. He's got decent defense on the ground. Decent enough. But I think Prochazka could take him down if he wants to. And I think Prochazka was getting to Pereira with the feints a little bit. And I think now that Prochazka's been in there, he's seen the calf kicks now. He's experienced what that's like. The fact that there's no real tell on the calf kicks. I think he's kind of prepared for that a little bit more now. I just think this is Prochazka's fight to win. I also think the motivation levels are different for these two. Like Prochazka's like, I want to win the championship. And Pereira's like, I gotta fight this guy again who I've already beat for the championship type shit. You know what I mean? It's like superstitious almost, my pick for this fight. But it's just, I have a feeling Prochazka's gonna catch him up against the cage with something and hurt him bad. And this time, instead of Alex Pereira landing that hook combo, maybe it doesn't land. And maybe Prochazka lands instead when Pereira's hurt up against the cage, But this fight is insane variance because Prochazka constantly puts himself in danger in the line of fire. But I think that's what you have to do against Pereira, going technique for technique. at distance in a kickboxing matchup is pretty much suicide a lot of the times against Pereira. You really have to force it and get him moving back, and that's what Prochazka did so well. When he would blitz forward and Pereira would like do like a jump step back, and but Yuri would be still so close to him, he would throw a shot and it would land because Pereira was like used to people like doing that. He jumps back, he's out of range. Prochazka would just keep crashing into him over and over again, and he would catch him, and that type of exchange. This fight's a 50-50, guys. We're gonna have some fun this weekend. This is a sick fucking fight. But I'm leaning Prochazka, man. I think he's gonna catch Alex Pereira. I think he's gonna TKO him. I really do. But yeah, um, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys for 82 subs. We're almost at 100. That's very epic, you guys. I appreciate that. Um, we got a lot of underdogs on this card. We'll see how we do. But yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.